Good morning and welcome to Rising. We've got another great show for you today. It is Monday morning. We're kicking off the week, me and Niall Stanage, and it feels like a new season finally in the District of Columbia. Some gorgeous weather over the weekend. The cherry blossoms blossoming. It was a zoo at the cherry blossoms if you went to see them. There were so many people, oh my God. And there were a lot of kites that made it look to me like aliens were attacking, like from the Avengers movies. So I had a great time.
Well, I stayed away from the tidal basin itself, but there were too many people on the streets for my liking, Robby. But it is beautiful weather. That is certainly a good thing. A breath of spring and lots to get to.
Yes.
So let's start off with what is on your radar.
Well, Atlantic Magazine editor-in-chief Jeffrey Goldberg is calling bull SHIT on National Security Advisor Michael Waltz's explanation for how the former's phone number ended up in the latter's Signal chat. We have obviously been following Signalgate for the past week. You know this story by now. The fact is that the Trump official, Waltz, inadvertently added Goldberg, an anti-Trump journalist, to a group chat where highly sensitive attack plans, war plans, whatever we're calling them, those were discussed with respect to U.S. plans to bomb Houthi terrorists in Yemen. Waltz admits he screwed up, accidentally bringing in a notorious anti-Trump journalist to this secret government chat. But he maintains it was an innocent mistake. Trump has apparently accepted that explanation, and the administration seems ready to move on and to acquit Waltz, instead attacking the Atlantic as a liberal rag intent on bringing down the Trump administration. They emphasize that the attack on the Houthis was successful, so what's the problem? Well, with great respect, Mr. President, the problem is that Michael Waltz's excuse for how Goldberg ended up in the group chat is nonsense. I don't believe it for 1 second. I'm sorry I don't. I say this with love, with affection, with a desire for the foreign policy articulated by Vice President J.D. Vance. One of a restraint of America first. I want that to succeed. The problem is we can't be sure Waltz shares that viewpoint. He's a Bush-Cheney neoconservative, i.e. maybe he had Goldberg on speed dial because they talk with some regularity. Maybe they chat about their shared nation-building neoconservative ideology. I'm just asking questions here, questions that more people within the administration should be asking. After all, Goldberg does not agree with Waltz that they don't know each other. Here he was this weekend responding to Waltz's contention that it was some totally harmless mistake.
If you have somebody else's contact and then somehow it gets sucked in, it gets sucked in.
Jeffrey, what do you make of those explanations?
This isn't the Matrix. Phone numbers don't just get sucked into other phones. I don't know what he's talking about there. Very frequently in journalism, the most obvious explanation is the explanation. My phone number was in his phone because my phone number is in his phone. He's telling everyone that he's never met me or spoken to me. That's simply not true. I understand why he's doing it. But this has become a somewhat farcical situation. There's no subterfuge here. My number was in his phone. He mistakenly added me to the group chat. There we go.
I'm not bringing this to your attention because I agree with Goldberg. His foreign policy views are anathema to mine. That's the problem. It was an easy mistake for Waltz to add him to this Signal group. If there's an explanation that doesn't impugn Waltz, okay, let's hear it. I'm all ears. But his phone number magically appeared on my phone is not a real explanation, people. So in the meantime, I am forced to agree with Saagar Enjeti, the conservative host of Breaking Points and my predecessor here on Rising. He writes, I still cannot believe that MAGA and Trump are giving Waltz a pass. He insulted the nation's intelligence, he lied, and he leaks. But I guess denying Goldberg a scalp is more important. Pathetic, honestly. You know what? It is a bit pathetic. If the media is the enemy of the people, what does a neoconservative-leaning Trump administration official, why does he have the phone number of this archetypical mainstream media mouthpiece in his contact list? I think you know just as well as I do.
Well, Robby, there's so many elements to that, and some I agree with and some I do not. I'm not sure that I agree with this idea that it is automatically nefarious for politicians to have journalists' numbers in their phones, irrespective of whether they agree with that journalist or not. And I think the problem here is Waltz adding Goldberg by accident. And to be fair, I don't think you're suggesting that he did it in some way deliberately or nefariously to embarrass anyone else in the Trump administration. So look, journalists and politicians talk all the time in this town, as you're well aware.
Well, let's see his contact list then.
Well,
let's see how many journalists he has in there.
Let's see your contact list then and see how many journalists you have in yours.
Well, that's fine. Well, I'm the journalist. I can have people. I have all sorts of people all over the political spectrum.
No, but I mean, the point is these conversations occur in Washington, anywhere where political journalism is practiced. The fact that Waltz has Goldberg's number in his phone is not necessarily nefarious. Now, I do agree that the matrix, like, oh, it just got sucked in magically from the atmosphere, that's a completely absurd explanation.
He could have offered the explanation you just gave. He could have said, oh, I have numerous journalists' contact info in my phone. In both the here's all the Fox News people whose contact I have, here's all the CNN people, here's all the Washington Post people, yes. People all over the place, because I think it's important to remain in contact with these media figures to disseminate the view of the conservative administration. He could have certainly said that. That would be a much better explanation than, I've never talked to this person before, I have no idea how their phone number is in my phone, because that's a lie.
Well,
it's a lie.
Well, that's the part I agree with. It just makes him look a kind of absurd character to come out with these risible explanations for what everyone can kind of see, what happened. Now, I do find it slightly odd that Waltz is taking all the heat for this, and Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, is taking very little, because though the mistake was Waltz's initially, it's Hegseth who was the one who shared the war plans, attack plans, or whatever we wish to call them. If you're going to share that information, I don't know, I think maybe you should look through the group chat and make sure you know who is on it before you do all of that. There have subsequently been other stories about Pete Hegseth. The Wall Street Journal, I think it was, reporting that he had brought his wife, Jennifer Hegseth, to meetings with foreign officials, and that is certainly unorthodox. Maybe she has some lower-level security clearance, but that's not apparent. And,
is that unorthodox? I believe you that it's unorthodox. But
it's unorthodox to do it at the kind of meetings that he was at, one of which was at the Pentagon, one of which was related to a NATO summit. So it's not, he didn't take her to a state dinner, which would not be, of course, unorthodox at all.
Yeah, I think I am of a slightly different view on this one. I think Michael Waltz should clearly go down for this, not Pete Hegseth, because he made the mistake of adding the journalist. And I think it speaks more to the underlying ideology, and that is not what... now, maybe behind closed doors, Trump is more upset about this than he's letting on. And I think it is not beyond the realm of possibility that something is done about Waltz after the controversy dies down a little bit. You know, they don't want to give the media a scalp. Right. I keep hearing that phrase over and over again. That is clearly a true thought coming out of the administration, that they don't want them to have been right about something, which fair enough, but we don't want to undermine the foreign policy is the most important thing. And I wonder how on board he is with the kind of America First thing that J.D. Vance clearly represents and that Trump purports to represent, although Trump's a little bit less precise about policy details than someone like J.D. Vance, who's very much on message and wants to steer the entire administration to be on that message. Is Michael Waltz going to be a team player about that? I think he has some proving to do if he's going to remain a part of the team. Yeah,
I don't think that's unfair, and there are obviously different strands within the Trump administration. Marco Rubio, I think, would have more in common instinctively with the Waltz position than he would with the Vance-Trump
as recently
position.
As two years ago, a year and a half ago, for sure. Right. But he's singing a different tune now.
He is, no, absolutely. I do think, though, just on the final point on the whole Signalgate matter, you know...
And then we're going to put it to bed, I think.
I think we'll maybe have had enough of it at that stage. But because it is so easily understandable to so many people, this is group chat and there's a reporter on it and they're discussing an attack. Obviously it has had a lot of legs as a story that way, and it has grabbed the public imagination. But there are massively serious implications, not only in relation to American national security, but also American allies, the sharing of intelligence, cooperation on sensitive areas. Is that going to continue at the same level as before when there's this massive degree of recklessness and, frankly, incompetence around this stuff?
Next up, why is President Trump mad at Putin? We'll discuss. Stay with us.